Okay, hi English 9. This is take 7. Loom is being really difficult, and I'm hoping, cross your fingers, that I can get all the way through this video and actually get it to work. So if you feel like you're having technology issues, you are not the only one. I'm sorry. I've spent 3 hours trying to record this really short lesson. So we are going to begin discussing creating your introduction and thesis statement. So let me repeat a couple times. If you are at this point, it means that you have listened to the Welcome to Session video and you did the pre-writing activity, which was to brainstorm terms and research terms that you would be essentially interested in to write a definition essay. So let me repeat this clearly. If you're at this stage where it says crafting your introduction and thesis statement, you are not drafting your paper yet. Again, let me repeat, you are not drafting your introduction. This is just a lecture to talk about the organizational patterns of the paper. We're going to talk about the introduction, the thesis statement, topic, sentences, body, paragraph. Then you're going to create an outline, which is a brainstorming of your paper. And after that, you'll start drafting your introduction and your body paragraph. Okay. So note, you are not writing your paper right now. You are just listening, taking notes to this lecture. So the introduction paragraph, your learning target and success criteria. You will understand the purpose for providing an introduction and the difference between a thesis and a topic. And I will be able to watch and listen to a video, this one, about the introduction paragraph and thesis statements by taking notes in my English notebook. So how you're going to accomplish understanding the purpose of providing introduction and thesis is by listening carefully to this video and a YouTube video that you're going to watch in this session, by taking notes and then essentially asking questions for clarification through email or Google Meets with me. So tips when crafting your introduction. So before you start drafting your own paper, so we're not writing our paper yet, we have to talk about the organizational paragraphs first. So your first step would be to write an introduction paragraph, right? Like in any other essay. A good introduction for a definition essay should accomplish these two bullet pointed ideas. 1, interest the reader in the topic and invite them into further reading. So interest me, right? Pull me in to this essay. And then to include a thesis statement, a claim that you're saying is thought-provoking in your perspective of why a term, a concept, or a phenomenon needs to be uncovered and defined. So a few strategies you could try for this introduction. So at the top, you see it says in blue, watch this video on writing hooks. I need you now to... what you'll do is you'll pause this video, you'll go to Schoology where you found this link, and then you will click on the YouTube link that I also attached where you found this presentation. And you are going to watch that YouTube video now. It's about 9 minutes. So pause this, go watch the YouTube video, and then come back and continue listening to the lecture. Okay, so I assume you're back now that you watched the video. And essentially the video, hoping that you took notes, gave some really good tips about the introduction paragraph. And to be honest, I won't be surprised if many of you are like, okay, yes, this was review, Miss Song. Like, I've been doing this in middle school. Great. That's awesome. I hope that is the case. And they talked a lot about, they used a pyramid, right? And they put the pyramid upside down, so if the pyramid was like this, right? And at the top, it's really broad. And as you go down to the pyramid to the point, it gets a lot more specific. And so an introduction paragraph is like an upside down pyramid. It starts off broad, and by the time you get to the last sentence of the introduction, it's very specific about what the paper is going to talk about and the purpose of the paper. And so, but at the very beginning, you need a hook. The point of the introduction is to tell me the purpose, but it's also to grab my interest as the reader. And so that YouTube video gave you lots of different ideas of what types of hooks can I write to really grab in Miss Song to be intrigued by this essay. And in bullet points on the screen, as you can see, I said begin with a quotation or a dictionary definition. You can begin with a story or anecdote. I love anecdotes. Just make sure it's not a super long one. Your introduction does not need to be a full page, right? It should be somewhere between 5 to 12 sentences, somewhere between there. And then ask a question, right? You could ask a rhetorical question at the beginning to try to get me to really be thinking to myself, you know. And in that video, it talked about other hooks. So it's important for you to decide what's the best hook for you. And as you continue to write through that body paragraph, like you're hooking me, you're giving me a little background, by the time I get to the end of that introduction paragraph, I'm going to get to a thesis statement, right? But before we talk about thesis statements, here are some of the biggest pitfalls to avoid in crafting your introduction. Don't explain the assignment in the introduction. Please do not explain to me what I was asking you to do. You need to pretend as you're writing this paper that it's not for a class. Of course, I know what the assignment is, right? So you don't want to do that. And that is a common mistake that students will do. Another thing is don't say things like in this paper or in this essay. They're very cliche. Jump right into the topic with all of that without using that extra verbiage. And then the last pitfall to avoid, don't jump in to the main information of your paper. Meaning, don't start talking about the stuff that you would talk about in your body paragraphs in the introduction, because it ruins it for me. Because then it's kind of like, oh, now you're talking about the meat of your paper, but the meat of your paper is supposed to be in the body paragraphs. The point of the introduction is to hook me and then also to tell me what's the purpose, right, of the rest of the paper, which gets us to the thesis statement. And so the thesis statement is the very last sentence of your introduction body paragraph, okay? So remember the pyramid. You're starting broad with a hook, you're working your way down, and once you get to the tip of the pyramid, you're like, okay, here's the whole purpose of why I'm writing this paper. Now read it in the body paragraphs. So tips on crafting a thesis statement. So like I said, the thesis statement belongs in the introduction paragraph, and it always goes at the end. So it's usually the last sentence of the introduction paragraph. A thesis statement is one sentence that expresses the main idea. So it's usually only one sentence. Sometimes it can be two sentences. And so this thesis statement is expressing what is the entire main idea or the main point and purpose of your entire paper. So like I'm going to be able to read that thesis statement to say, okay, so this is the purpose. This is what I'm looking for as I read in the body paragraphs. And so it's not a research paper per se. It's an essay. You are going to do a little research because you have to research the historical and cultural origins of the word. But it's not a research paper per se, like a formal one. It's more of just an essay. And the type of genre is definition. And so you're defining something, right? And essentially explaining it, more of an expository than an argumentative way. So, like I said, the thesis statement is the main argument of the definition essay, which the student should provide at the end of his introduction. So again, where does it go? At the end of your introduction. It doesn't have to be a regular thesis statement. So I should be able to assume that a lot of this information you're familiar with, right? You are transitioning from 8th to 9th grade. And at this point, you should have been writing lots of different genre essays, and you have learned organizational patterns of paragraphs and also thesis statements. Now, this is a little different though. So as you know, in the definition paper, you're not necessarily trying to prove anything, right? The main goal of this kind of paper is to explain the term and why it needs to be unraveled and discovered further. It needs to be investigated further, right? Because you're like, there's so much more to this concept or word. So simply decide on the clearest complex explanation and make it your thesis statement. We're going to practice thesis statements, or we're going to practice the difference between thesis statements and topic sentences in the next part of the lesson on Schoology after this. So don't confuse your topic with a thesis statement, and you will learn about this next on Schoology even more. So a topic can be thought of as a general area of inquiry. Topic designates the general subject of the essay. So the general idea of the essay might be about love, right? That's your topic. So the general idea is about love, but that's not what you're going to talk about specifically in your thesis statement, right? So look in the bold here. It says, For instance, your topic might be about the term love. A thesis is more specific and it can be thought of as existing within your topic. So example, you might really be talking about love is blind. So the broad idea, right? The general subject you're talking about is love, but specifically in your thesis statement, you're talking about the concept that love is blind from the term love. Okay. So the thesis arises from the topic or the subject on which the writing focuses and may be defined as follows. So look at the bottom part in bold. It says a thesis is an idea stated as an assertion, right? You're asserting yourself by saying this is this, which represents a reasoned response to a question at issue, which will serve as the central idea of a unified composition. So really the question is, if I chose the general subject or general term love, the question is, what is it that you're really trying to explain about love that has to be defined further or investigated further? Well, you're going to say, well, really, love is blind. And so we need to really unpack why love is blind and why this concept needs to be defined further from the idea of the general subject of love. Okay. Okay. If you have any questions, remember, just email me or meet me on Google Meets with our class link, and I am always happy to answer questions. Bye, you guys.